how God brings all this stuff together, isn't it? You know, it's urgent. But you have to be. And the phrase that's been in my mind for about 3 weeks now and wouldn't go away, which is why I picked it up for this morning, is you hear it, you hear the message, but have you really heard it? And you know where I've ended up back? It's the 10 virgins. They're haunting me, the parable of the 10 virgins. I think this is about the 4th or maybe even the 5th time that they've driven what I want to share, or what God's laid on my heart. But it's very much the fact that there is a readiness required. Those that were ready, you remember? The 5 that were ready got to go to the wedding feast. Those that weren't ready went off to get their lamps sorted out. By the time they got back, it was too late. And it's that kind of urgency, of persistence, of being ready, is what we've been sharing on and off over the last weeks. And I just had this feeling that God was saying to me, certainly, and maybe for you guys as well, you hear this message, mate, but have you really heard it? Have you heard it to the point where you're prepared to change the way you live and to put more focus, as the 5 wise virgins did, on Jesus coming again? There've been lots of conversations I had with people, partly coming out of the Bible study on Tuesday mornings where we're wading our way through Revelation, but with others as well, and people outside of the church. There's this idea that, you know, times are difficult. We're living in very uncertain times. I know from my personal point of view that this is the most uncertain time politically in my lifetime. And there's lots of speculation, and you never quite know what the truth is and what's not the truth. And it's very difficult to see through all of this and to know how to respond to it and to live in this changing world where things are so often against us as Christians. So I want to start with Ephesians chapter 6 and just remind us. In verse 12, Paul says, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. He makes it very clear that it's a spiritual battle. And one of the things that I've learnt over the years, talking with other people, is that so many Christians do not have an end-to-end view of the timeline in the Bible. So I thought I'd just quickly go through it. God creates the heavens and the earth. There is a rebellion against God, and Adam and Eve are tempted, and they are separated from God. Their sin separates them from God. God's love for the world he creates, for Adam and Eve and for you and I, is so great that he then sends Jesus into the world to hang on a cross, to shed his blood and to breathe his last so that you and I can be forgiven. And then Jesus gives the commission, go into all the world to tell everybody else about it. Because as Jesus talks to, we're going to go to this passage in a minute, when Jesus talks to his disciples on the Mount of Olives, he says times are going to get really difficult. The forces of evil will fight back against the spread of the gospel, because that's the spiritual battle that is behind life and creation. The rebellion against God is the thread right the way through our lives, through our society today. And we have to see it in that light. Never mind what our political opinion might be in a human sense. We have to see it as part of the spiritual warfare. And of course, at the end of the Bible, you get the outcome, don't you? Where God finally steps in, he sorts out the evil, he destroys the evil, and he recreates the new heaven and the new earth. And we, as believers in his name, we live with him in the perfection that he originally intended for us right back at the beginning of the Bible. We win. Well, God wins. We just benefit from him winning. But the point about it is that it gets messy. If you read Revelation, there are passages in there that are really quite harrowing. It gets very, very vividly, descriptively harrowing. You read the bit about the winepress. You go into the bit about the chaos and the death and the destruction that evil brings. It's not nice. You think of the Bible as love and peace and joy and patience and kindness, don't you? But it's telling you the truth of this timeline. And the battle against evil gets messy. And we have to be prepared to stand next to Christ and, if necessary, be messed upon. Because that is the truth. We belong to the 5 who are ready and focused on Christ. Or are we going to step back from the messiness and go and do what the world wants us to do and then get caught out at the end because the door to heaven is closed in our face? It's our choice. God doesn't make us or force us. But I want this morning just for you to understand that battle at the background. And we're going to have a look at Matthew 24 just quickly. It's on page 993 in the Bible if you want to have a look. This is Jesus talking to his disciples on the Mount of Olives, not that long before the cross and so on. In Matthew 24, verse 6, he says, page 993, "You will hear of wars and rumours of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed, for the end is still to come." Verse 7, "But nation will rise up against nation." There's wars everywhere on the news, aren't there? Some months ago, I actually did a little Google search and said, how many wars have there been in my lifetime? I put my date of birth in. And you know, the list was horrendous. It went to several hundred. You know, we think of just the odd war, don't we? Occasionally one that's on the tech. But actually, if you go back through the last 70 odd years, you'll find there are hundreds around the world. And even today, they are in the tens, not in the singles. There are wars and conflicts and people dying and suffering everywhere. Nation will rise against nation, says Jesus, because it's part of that spiritual battle. Verse 9, "Then you, the disciples who follow me, will be handed over to be persecuted, and you will be hated because of me." Does that sound familiar? What about that church? I think in Colchester, the minister was out on the street. He was preaching the gospel. He got arrested, and they put one of these banning order things on him to prevent him from preaching the gospel in public. It was a Bread of Life Church, I think it was called, in Colchester. That was just for last week. Virtually every day or every week, we see Christians being shut down, whereas we see other religions being encouraged and protected. And it's because the force of evil is at work in the world. This is the thread that we're talking about here. And Christians are always going to get into the messy bits, because that's the point. Jesus was messed up in the sense that he had to suffer and his body torn apart on a cross in order that we could be forgiven. And he calls us to similarly to follow him, to sacrifice ourselves into that battle of goodness against evil, of being the vessels of goodness, the proclamation of the gospel, and the love and care for others who suffer. And it means sometimes, friends, that we get messed upon. It's the nature of evil. You're on the side of goodness and light and God. Evil does not like people who are on the side of lightness and God and love. Verse 12, "Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold." Again, it's very, very indicative of the fraction and friction in society today, isn't it? And the gospel, verse 14, "The gospel will be preached in the whole world." Again, we can look at the world as we are today, and we're pretty close to that. The technology enables the gospel to be preached and to be transmitted virtually everywhere. Some countries are resistant, North Korea, for example. China suppresses it. But nevertheless, the gospel is being preached, and now the technology enables it to be preached and heard virtually everywhere in the world. And as you say in verse 14, the gospel's preached in all the world, and then what happens? The end will come. Verse 21. We're on to verse 21. There will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now. The battle of good against evil is going to get messy. We are just seeing perhaps the start of that in our lifetime. At that time, verse 30, at that time, the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all nations will mourn. Verse 30, 31, carry on reading. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. He will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather the elect from the four winds, from one end of the earth to the other. That's what the groom did. He came for the bride, the church. Are you ready? Are you in the 5 that are ready for when Christ comes back? Or are you in the foolish part of the camp, where you're distracted by the world and you're not looking forward, and you're not looking towards his coming? You hear the message, but have you really heard it? You can go into the book of Revelation. We haven't got time. It's just a complex book. We can only you've not even scratched the surface of it this morning. But in the book of Revelation, there are very vivid descriptions of the end times. Very, very vivid descriptions indeed. The whole book is vivid and descriptive, but very, 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 very true. And it talks across, the bit that you will have heard of is the Antichrist and the 666 thing. But that's part of this period of great tribulation. What was it that Jesus said? He said that you will hear of wars, don't be alarmed. Nation will rise against nation, etc. There will be great distress. Verse 21, unequaled. Just listen to that phrase in verse 1. Great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now. My parents lived through the Second World War. My father fought in North Africa and Italy. He thought that was pretty stressful. But Jesus says the times are coming that nothing in the past equals what is going to come, because the battle to destroy evil is a dark but victorious battle that God will win. And in Revelation, there's this period of great tribulation described, when the force of evil is set free, and the rise of the political system begins to produce a control of mankind, and the mark of the beast is placed upon people's heads or hands, and it says you cannot buy or sell food unless you have that mark. In other words, you can't exist without having that mark upon you. Lots of speculation about what it is and what it is, but let's think for a moment. There are technologies around for the first time in human history that begin to give you a clue of how this might actually work. You know, they talk very openly about digitalisation of ID and digitalisation of money. That gives total control, once that happens, over each individual, if the political system wants that control. You have communication systems that now enable the whole world to receive messages. And so it's possible for communications. We also have the rise of AI. Now, I'm not an expert on AI by any stretch of the imagination, but who knows what AI will do? There's all sorts of speculation about where that's going to go in the coming years. But we already know that it will take away lots of basic entry-level jobs, probably. And it will begin to increase and expand its breadth and its control and influence around the way mankind operates. It's a very powerful weapon that you and I sat here today have absolutely no influence or control over. None at all. And yet it's there. So I don't know whether the tribulation and the second coming and the Antichrist, the false prophet, is imminent, or whether it's at some point further down the line. Well, it's certainly some point further down the line. I don't know how imminent it is. The Bible makes very clear that we don't know the day that Christ will come again. But what it is asking us to do is to be ready. We're back to the virgins again. Are you in the camp of those that are ready and focused and prepared to stand your ground when evil gets rough with you? Or are you in the 5 that are sidetracked by the world, not prepared to stand up against evil, and will go with the flow of the world because it's easier, it's less painful? Which side of the fence are you on? You hear the message of the parable of the virgins, but have you heard it? In your heart, have you made that decision where you want to stand with relation to Christ and his coming again? So we don't know which way the world is going, but the world is in a very difficult, dangerous place. And we know the force of evil is apparent when you look at things that are going on in the world. Whether we look at the sexualization agenda, the abortion agenda, the political movements across the world, the war in Iran, whatever we look at, there's so much going on that has a hint, a smack of evil about it. What comes next is that you and I are going to be called to stand for Jesus. That standing already is beginning to meet resistance in our society. And my earnest belief is that it will probably get a lot worse as time goes by. So how dear to your heart is Jesus? Are you in the camp that's going to cling on to him, expect his coming? Or are you in the camp that the evil forces and the pressures of society drive you to look in other directions? The choice is yours. But let me tell you, what we've heard today from the testimony and the sharing of the words is really interesting. Because God is telling us it's urgent. You are going to evangelize now, not tomorrow. Why would he give us that message if there wasn't a need for us to stand for Christ today? There's the word of persistence. It's not something that is easy. We have to keep at it. Our family members, gosh, how many times have we talked to family members and they still don't want to know Christ? We've got to keep at it and pray for them and love them and share with them. And as the world goes up and down in its evil nature, then we can use those opportunities to bring hope and love and forgiveness and perspective and the future, eternal life with Christ into their thought and into their being. Let's proclaim the good news that at the end of the battle, we win. If you read the Bible, we win. God triumphs over evil eventually, messy though the pathway is. And the question, friends, is you hear all of this, but have you heard it? Is it in your heart? Are you tied to Christ, that whatever tomorrow brings, good or bad, you will stand and shine for him and proclaim the good news that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through him. I just pray God's love and blessing over each one of you this morning. I pray that you might know afresh in this moment, this day, how much God really loves you. Just let his love wash over you now and this afternoon. If you're in that desert place that we heard about, then let God's love come and surround you and soothe you and support you and lift you up. If you have aches and pains from the turmoil of life, then let God's love surround you and give you a sense of warmth and healing. If you love your family, pray for them this day and make up your mind that you're going to be urgent in sharing your love and knowledge of Jesus Christ with them. As God's love surrounds you this day, say to him, Lord, I want to be in the wise camp, not the foolish camp. I look forward to your coming into the salvation of the world and the new heaven and the new earth and the paradise of eternity that you call us to be part of. Soon and very soon, we will see the coming of the Lord.